Are you ready to challenge yourself and think bigger? I'm your host, Marianne Marchese, and together we'll hear the unfiltered, unscripted stories of those who've taken big risks and transformed their bold ideas into reality. Season 1 is brought to you by multi-award-winning law firm Legalite, where bold ideas thrive. Hello there. Jess Colgan is a social enterprise leader reshaping perceptions of disability and employment in Australia. With her brother, Brett, she's the co-founder of GingerSnap, a patisserie that elevates the talents of people with disabilities. For the last 3.5 years, she's also been the CEO of All Things Equal, a hospitality social enterprise that creates award wage roles for people with disabilities. Jess, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have seen firsthand how systemic bias can block talented people from entering the hospitality industry in particular. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience growing up?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the big sister of Brett. Brett is a very talented pastry chef now, but Brett was born profoundly deaf, which means he has no hearing at all. When he was 3, my parents decided to make a very big decision and get him a cochlear implant. And at the time, he was the youngest person ever to get that implant and the 100th person at that time. So it was quite controversial to get it done. And throughout schooling, he really had a lot of challenges through that time and finished up school early but got an opportunity to work at Baker's Delight. And at Baker's Delight, he then went on to actually become a qualified baker. And that was, he really learnt his talents and how to use his hands and be really, really clever in that space. But decided that wasn't the right sort of place for him. And then went on to work at Crown, there was an opportunity there to actually become a pastry chef. And so throughout that journey, he had really experienced in all different areas of life, a lot of times victimization over his disability, really seen as in lots of different circles, like left out of social settings and really not knowing exactly where he belonged.
So this is even, though he found a role that gave him a chance, he was still
there were
left
still
out
areas
in the workplace.
there were still areas where he didn't feel like he belonged. And so really along the way, I could see that as he became more confident in his work, though, that it did change parts of him and let him be able to express himself in different ways and find connections with people in different ways. And so, I guess over time I've really seen the different challenges that a person can have in the workplace when they've got different challenges, but equally what can happen to that person when they really get set up with the right strengths and really hone in on their strengths and be able to thrive. And so, Brett got this opportunity to become a pastry chef, and his work really, they did accept him for who he is and the fact that he's deaf. They provided deaf awareness training to his team. They did a whole series of things and really allowed him to hone in on his craft.
And how did the workplace, know where to access that awareness training? Was that already part of that business that they offered that kind of, extra support? Because it's often not just about the person with a disability. It is the people around them as well. And I guess if you don't have a lived experience of disability, you may not know how to, be respectful and how to be inclusive in the workplace. So I guess 2 parts to that question. How did the business know to offer that and access that? And do you think that that's a really important thing for businesses to do?
That's a huge part of it. So Often we see the person with disability as the problem in the workplace setting, when actually it's that most people at work haven't actually ever interacted with a deaf person or a person with disability. They most likely don't have someone in their family. They haven't gone to school with a person with disability. They've never worked with a person with disability. Most people don't have bad intentions, but because they get nervous or uncomfortable or actually don't want to do the wrong thing, they step themselves away rather than leaning into the experience and really supporting the person. So in Brett's experience, one of the challenges he was having at work, which was really frustrating for him, was that if he didn't understand an instruction, he would have to ask 5 or 6 times, and that can happen all the time. He is completely deaf. His cochlear implant gives him a small percentage of hearing, but nothing like what it is for us. And so he would have to ask 5 or 6 times for an instruction to be repeated sometimes. And in the end, people would just get frustrated and say to him, "Can't you just listen?" Aww. And he's like, well, of course I'm trying to listen. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. And Absolutely. It's not that I'm not trying. I'm coming home at the end of the day and I'm completely exhausted. But there was just this sort of, because he was so capable in so many areas, there was an expectation that he could just, listen hear the same as, and listen the same as everyone else. And so that was really frustrating. So he was a part of a disability employment program. And so he expressed these concerns to the program manager, and they were able to tap into a particular sort of training called deafness awareness training. And that got the whole team together, got them to explain to the team what it was like for Brett, what that experience was like for Brett, why he can't hear, and the impact that not being able to hear had on him in the workplace, the additional stress that it causes, but also just the exhaustion that it causes from having to listen even more. So, that was provided through an external provider, and that did help. And, for him in the workplace, he's always been told that he's not allowed to turn his hearing aid off because it's an OH&S issue. But that can be really problematic for him because if your kitchens are really loud, and so if he's in the kitchen and it's really loud and maybe people are playing music and having conversations, that really interrupts his ability to concentrate on the work that he's doing. And for everybody else, me included, I like things being noisy. I don't mind there being noise around or music being played. Sometimes that can help me concentrate, whereas for him it's the complete opposite. So,
and I think also we're obviously not deaf, so we've grown up with noise around us, and for him that would be quite jarring, or for anybody that's deaf that would be really jarring because that's not the norm that, they've grown up with.
Yeah, so, exactly.
And also there are other people who, as you were alluding to before, do like to put their headphones on or to have silence, or, they might be neurodivergent and that stimulation is too much for them. So, it is really quite surprising and shocking that he was asked not to turn it off.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's something that he's starting to unlearn for himself now. We have a business together, which I'm sure we'll get to, but now we say, well, that's a deaf-led business. And so if you want to turn your hearing off, that is within your rights. It's everybody else's problem if you have your hearing aid off and they have to come and tap you on the shoulder to talk to you.
Yeah,
they can do that.
And that's fine. That's not that's just really an imposition.
Yeah, that's right. That's just a simple accommodation that needs to happen. So, for him, it's sort of unlearning some of those experiences as well, being able to really step into his sense of self and empowerment, really, belief and agency, and being able to speak up for himself, say what's important for him, how he'll work best, and then everybody else being willing to work around that because they're actually very simple accommodations that really don't
take
throw anyone out
away.
Yeah, that's right.
Other people.
Yeah.
And you did co-found GingerSnap in 2022 with your brother.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Yeah, so Brett was working at Crown and making really beautiful desserts particularly for the conservatory at Crown. And he made this gorgeous celebration cake that was made for birthdays particularly. And it was vegan, gluten-free, nut-free. It satisfied all these different dietary requirements. And it was absolutely so beautiful and so delicious. And I had been working in hospitality for a long time, but more in a finance and strategy sort of space. And chefs were constantly complaining about dietary requirements, how much it was costing to satisfy all these different ranges of dietary requirements. And actually not when you looked at the quality of the food that was going out for a dietary requirement versus everything else, it wasn't at the same standard. So when I saw Brett making these beautiful things, I thought there was a real opportunity there. I was also working in the social enterprise sector at the time, working with a lot of social enterprises, still particularly in hospitality, who were creating employment for refugees and people seeking asylum, and really doing a beautiful job of bringing together the storytelling elements of food, people's cultures and histories and all of that. And I found that really inspiring. And when I looked around, I saw that I really wanted to be involved in more disability-led organisations. And when I looked around, I saw that there was really very few people with disability or deaf people in leadership positions getting a platform to talk about their experiences. And also really not many instances of people with disability getting paid award wages. So people with disability have traditionally been segregated from society, whether it's through education or employment or housing.
Yeah, I was thinking of that as you were speaking earlier, because I know that in school where I went in primary school, we had a school across the road that was just for kids with disabilities. And so we didn't get, this was like the 80s and 90s, we didn't get that experience of, as you were saying before, having ever crossed paths with someone with a disability, unless they were in your family, let alone, how to interact with someone that's deaf. So I don't think that's as much the case now, but certainly it would have been Brett's experience growing up, and then obviously it's translated into the workplace too.
Yeah, that's right. We were fortunate to go to an integrated school, so where there was a deaf school and a mainstream school on the same campus. And so the kids from the deaf school would come into our classroom and go back as and when was necessary, but it was good to have everyone together on the same school
camps to have that experience with each other, and not be segregated across the road.
So so I guess that was sort of the impetus for the idea behind the business, was to say, okay, we've got this beautiful product that standalone is a gorgeous concept, but then equally, what can we do around advocacy for people with disability and deaf people in the workplace, in entrepreneurship as well, and really come to that from a lived experience perspective. So really be able to share Brett's stories. But the most important thing that I asked Brett at that point in time was, what did he want the world to know about him and about people with disability?
I love that question.
And and he said that he wanted the world to know that people with disability had limitless potential. And so that's the premise now for really everything that I do. That. Yeah, it was such a beautiful moment and beautiful words that it just carries through everything that we do now. And it's really about being positive and uplifting and sharing all sides of the spectrum of being a human and celebrating all of that.
Very real people that work with us. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
And you do say on the GingerSnap website, nothing about us without us. Can you explain a bit more about what that means?
Yeah, so that's a really beautiful motto that's used quite extensively across the disability community, and it's about ensuring that deaf people and people with disability have a seat at the table when decisions are being made about them and their lives. And that's the essence of GingerSnap. Beyond Beautiful Desserts is about ensuring that the individual is at the center of the conversation, and it's about celebrating that person, not making decisions on behalf of that person without them being involved. And really giving a person a voice.
And for founders or employers that may work with people with a disability, how do you think they can do that? Is it just as a matter of asking, what can I do with X, Y, Z?
Yeah.
Just ask the person.
Yeah, that's right. Most people, because they don't get asked often, if they get asked, they feel really happy about that. They won't feel confronted by asking, how can I support you? How can I help you to thrive in the workplace? They won't feel confronted by that. They'll feel excited that somebody is asking them in the first place.
Consulted.
Yeah, that's right. It's always about asking the person first. Sometimes some people won't be able to answer that question themselves, and so it is about bringing a support person into that conversation as well, but really making sure that that person feels included, feels heard, listened to, and treated with respect and treated like an adult as well, which is really important.
I think that's really key, and that's absolutely great advice. You've said that obviously you work in business with your brother. You've said GingerSnap has been the proudest and hardest challenge that you've been through. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, creating something from the ground up is just a challenging thing to do
already.
So, you've got all of the financial, constraints and thinking, really creatively, pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone.
And in a space that's not, as you said before, it's not really been done.
Yeah, that's
before.
right. Exactly. So in a practical sense, it's, I'm a chartered accountant by background, but, in the last 4 years, I've become a marketer, a salesperson, all of those different
Learned all
things.
these other hats.
Yeah, looked at product development, looked at all of these different things. I'm Brett's first taste tester.
It's not a bad
critic,
job to have.
So it's all of those things. But also I am my brother's mentor and my brother's cheerleader. In a family business, there's so many awesome sides to that. And then there's the challenging sides to it. The awesome sides are that your family completely understands you. They get what's going on. If you have an argument, you've had many of them in the past, so you know how to just, walk through it. It's not like it's I don't think you see it as a big deal in the same way that you might if it's somebody that's not part of your family. And then the challenging sides, of course, are that you have to take into consideration everybody's, feelings and emotions around something that might happen. Our dad works in the business as well and is really supportive. Our mum is not in the business but has supported us financially to get things off the ground. So there's lots of different pieces in there where, our parents are really concerned and care for our well-being. So when a stressful time happens, you're not only trying to look after yourself in that moment, you're trying to make sure that your parents aren't worried.
Okay.
And, so there's all those different things. But I think all of the positives far outweigh any of those challenges. And I think we're reaching a point in the business now where everybody can really see the opportunity and the vision that Brett and I saw from the start, but it just takes a while to bring everyone on the journey with it.
Yeah, and especially, as I said, you're doing something that's not really been done before, so that journey takes that little bit longer and it takes a little bit longer to see the vision, but you're doing it, and that's I just absolutely commend you on that. Yeah. But on top of all that, you're also the CEO of All Things Equal, which, if the listener doesn't know, is a Melbourne-based social enterprise providing award wage employment in the hospitality industry to people with disabilities. How did that role come about?
So it actually came about when I was developing the ideas for GingerSnap, and I was looking for partners to work with, essentially. And at the time, I met the general manager, Bianca, and was talking to her about everything I was doing and my experience in hospitality and social enterprise and all of that. And she said to me, well, we're looking for a CEO. Would this be of interest to you? And I said, no. I've got too much. I had my own consulting business in the social enterprise sector. I was starting this thing with my brother, and it was like, no. And my kids are really little. No. And then the opportunity just kept coming up in all these different places. People from all over the place kept sending me this job and saying, this sounds like the perfect job for you. You should really go for it. You should really go for it. And then in reality, I was not chasing any work in my consulting business anymore because I was too just obsessed with this GingerSnap idea. But I knew that GingerSnap was going to take a while to get off the ground. And so I started talking to All Things Equal, and I said, I'd need flexibility because my kids are little, like all these different things. And so I put up all of these different barriers essentially, and the obstacles, that's the right word. And still they thought I was the right person for the job. And I think it is true, because I think when you come together with all of the different experience I had, it's pretty unique to sort of say, well, you've got hospitality, you've got social enterprise, you understand finance, you have disability.
Perfect blend.
Yeah, it is. It's somewhat serendipitous. So there was, so really that was how it came about, and it felt like a really good opportunity at the time. And they were equally really supportive of GingerSnap. They didn't see that as any form of conflict. They saw that as a real opportunity and saw that it meant I understood.
Well, it makes the industry so much better in not just hospitality, but the work that you're doing in the disability sector as well. It's such a positive to have two things like that coexisting.
Yeah, that's right. So I feel really fortunate to have met a group of people who were really just supportive about the concept and wanted to see both thrive together. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
You launched the All Things Equal report. Was that earlier this year?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was essentially a blueprint for disability employment in the hospitality industry. The hospitality industry is grappling with workforce shortages and apparently one of the biggest in history. But what did your report reveal about that challenge?
Yeah, so we're seeing that there is a gap in the market for people coming into employment for hospitality, and also that a lot of the hospitality workforce can be quite transient. So most people have worked in hospitality at some point, whether it was, at Macca's when they're in high school, or working as a waitress or waiter when they were going through uni, whatever the case is, but to get on to the next part of their life. And so we spoke to a lot of people in the industry and understood that there was a gap there, gathered the research, the data around those gaps as well. But then on the other side, we have, at All Things Equal, more than 100 people on our expression of interest list wanting to come and work at All Things Equal. And that's without us ever requesting for people to come onto that list. And to be honest, a lot of people don't even put their name down once they understand that how high the demand is. And the people that work with us have been with us for a really long time. So we've got people working with us who have been there from the beginning, 4.5 years. And that's not just our trainees with disability. That's our general manager, now head of impact, our operations manager. They've both been there from the very beginning. So we know that we've got people who really have longevity in the industry and want to stick around for it to be careers. And we could see that was a really interesting proposition for the hospitality industry. But on top of that was also that the hospitality industry is quite diverse from a cultural perspective, really beautiful at bringing different people into the mix. And we were talking to a lot of big employers who were understanding that they wanted their workforce to look even more like society, so even more representation. We talk with one big hotel group who understand that there's 20% of people with disability in the community. So they've set themselves a target to see if they can get to 20% of their workforce as being people with disability. So that feels like quite an exciting challenge for us, and something that we'd really like to take on and see if we can make a meaningful dent in some of those numbers.
And it feels like there's a stat in your report that says people with disabilities tend to stay in jobs longer. Like there was an average stat of around 4 years. So with these workforce shortages, it really seems like there's an opportunity to fill that gap through a completely untapped workforce.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
That's so great. And you did build a scalable model to put over 1,000 people into jobs by 2035. Tell me a bit about that model.
So when All Things Equal started, initially it was a cafe that was there to prove that people with disability could be paid award wages in community-facing roles. And so our mission is to bridge the gap between people with disability and the wider community. Nothing does that more beautifully than a cafe. But when I came to All Things Equal, which was around 18 months into the journey, we had a wait list of around 50 people wanting to come into employment. We had a limited number of roles that we could provide to people and a limited number of hours as well. The cafe wasn't growing substantially, so it was very restricted on what we could provide. So we decided as an organisation that we wanted to see, could we get people out into mainstream employment after working with us, where there was an opportunity for growth in the number of hours that they could work, where there was limitations to what we could provide, and way for us to bring more people through from that wait list. So we set about creating what we call an employment pathway model, which is a 3-stage model ultimately focused on getting people from never having had a job through to a job with a mainstream employer, so a big hotel, a catering company, those things. And so the first thing we set up was our pre-employment program. So the pre-employment program is that first step entry point into the world of hospitality. It's an opportunity to check if hospitality is right for you, because it's not right for everybody. We run that out of an off-site commercial kitchen. You learn so many different cooking skills, but you also, alongside that, we run pop-up cafes, we run a footy club canteen, so there's different opportunities for customer service. And we also teach all of the transferable skills that relate to work. So uniform, punctuality, giving and receiving feedback, OH&S, all of those critical parts that a lot of us might have learnt in our first job when we were 14 and 9 months, whereas a lot of our people haven't had that opportunity. So that's a really good opportunity to learn about that in a commercial setting. Then once a job becomes available in our cafe and catering services, people come through into their first award wage job in the cafe. In the cafe, they're working one-to-one with a hospitality trainer. That hospitality trainer has extensive experience in hospitality. We have supported them and trained them within the world of disability. And they work one-to-one with somebody on the shift. That is funded through the NDIS, which is a government funding arrangement. And then once a person is ready and we have a job available with one of our employment partners, they then graduate from All Things Equal and then go on to work with one of our employment partners. So at the moment we work with the W Hotel, which is a 5-star hotel in the city. We work with Food and Desire, who are a really huge catering company. They do things like the Grand Prix and VRC. And then law firm Arnold Bloch Liebler, which is a top-tier law firm in the city. So setting up for boardroom meetings and running their internal cafe, all of that sort of stuff. And then we have some partnerships that we're starting to lock in now with major sporting stadiums as well. And so once somebody is placed into employment, they go to work every day with an All Things Equal mentor. So they become an employee of the partner, but the mentor remains an employee of all things equal and really provides any support that individual needs at work throughout that transition phase, can support the employer to understand what it's like to have that person in the workplace, how they can support that person in the workplace, identify any training needs that the employer might need. So back to your initial question of, it's often not about the individual, it's about everybody within the workplace. Because often we see that the employer at the top level is really enthusiastic and keen, but the people that are actually on the ground doing the work every day, they're just focused on getting their job done.
Yeah.
And this can feel like another thing for them to have to do. So it's working out what education we need to do at that bottom level. We haven't got that perfect yet, but that's what we're working on at the moment.
Well, it's a work in progress, but you're already achieving such great strides with it.
Yeah.
Does the mentor stay on for the duration of, like forever, to support that person throughout their career, or how does that work?
It will all depend on the person.
Yep.
So some people are really working towards independence, and other people will need that support for
the long term.
Potentially the long term.
Yeah.
So because we're quite early in that stage of the work, everybody that we've placed, except one person actually, everybody else is still supported 100% by a mentor in the workplace. But we're working on how do we eventually taper that down, because it also depends on people's funding arrangements. Like we need NDIS to be able to provide that support. Otherwise, there's no other revenue sources for that. So not everybody has enough NDIS to cover the amount of work that they want to do either. Like there's some people who would love to work 15, 20 hours a week. And so if we can build up their independence, then they have more opportunity to take on more hours of work as well.
You've kind of touched on it a little bit already, but what are some misconceptions in the hospitality industry, or any industry for that matter, about hiring a person with a disability?
One of the biggest things that's been coming up lately is believing that there's a lack of motivation or lack of desire to be at work. And people in the workplace that are bringing those misconceptions to work are basing it on something that they've experienced in the past, maybe a program that they've seen or been a part of, met somebody who maybe had shown up to a program because, then they'd get a government payment for it or something like that. So somebody's had that experience in the past with one person, and then they are taking that assumption and they're placing it on the people that we're bringing through. One, that's completely unfair. But two, a lot of the time, when a person potentially looks disengaged in the work, that's just because they haven't learnt all of the masking techniques that the rest of us have. The rest of us know that we have to put on a smiley face and we have to do all these different things, even though we're finding the work really challenging and we don't know what to do. So
totally.
Yeah. So sometimes a person in the workplace is maybe, to you, they might look disengaged, but actually it's that they're learning something brand new, they're finding it really overwhelming, and they're just trying to absorb all of that information, and they're putting so much focus on absorbing and understanding the information, they don't have the ability to mask and put a smile on their face and all that.
It takes a lot of effort to mask anyway.
It does.
We do learn it, as you said, over time, but it's a lot of effort and it's quite exhausting to mask how you're feeling and if you're going through something personal and then you're masking it at work, that's just so exhausting. So if you haven't grown up having that experience, that would be 10 times harder.
That's right. And then coming back to your question earlier about what can an employer do or somebody in the workplace do, normally if somebody says to us, we think they just don't even want to be here, we turn around and say, okay, so have you asked the person? Because if I go and ask the person, they will tell me all the wonderful things about work, why they love it, who they love interacting with, the things that they really enjoy doing in the workplace. And just that question hasn't been asked. So I think it's really important to ask the person what they're loving, why they're here, what they enjoy doing, all of that sort of stuff. Don't make assumptions about a person, and don't bring previous experiences into the current experience.
Yeah, everyone's
come with
individual.
a really open mind.
And it's not fair, like you said, if you've had one bad experience and then tainting everybody with a disability with the same brush, that's not fair. We wouldn't do that to somebody without a disability. So it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's right.
What do you think could be the economic advantages of inclusive hiring practices?
We have met with multiple government ministers about our model, and the feedback on our model time and time again has been this is exactly what the NDIS was set up to achieve. So there's a lot of negative stories and rhetoric around the NDIS. But the NDIS is essentially set up to empower people to live their best lives, right? And most people with disability that I know at least actually want to be employed. They want to be a part of the workforce. They want to feel valued. They want an opportunity to be creative and to be their best selves. And so if we can utilise the NDIS in a way that actually generates economic outcomes by people being at work, generating revenue, turning that back into profits in an organisation and a really functioning business, that is such an excellent way to use this form of funding. And so we want to see more positive stories around that so that people can really reflect on this really excellent government initiative around the NDIS that is really empowering people to do what they want to do. And again, if we come back to those stats around retention rates and things like that, then that's also a really positive economic story for a business. Don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I know it's so expensive to recruit new staff.
Yeah.
And so if you can have someone in your team who's really dedicated, that's amazing. I know with the W Hotel, who's one of our partners, since they've focused on more inclusive hiring practices, they've had a phenomenal increase in their retention rates for their business overall. And so, of course, that means that they can just spend more time on working with the same people, executing on excellent customer service, doing all of those things rather than recruitment and training people and doing that over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that side, but 100% from that macro economic perspective, it's really thinking about how do we take a system like the NDIS and generate both social and individual outcomes as well as economic outcomes as well as a result of investing that sort of money into this.
What's one step with all that in mind? Because I don't see any downside to this. What's one step as an employer that people can make towards inclusion tomorrow? Like if you could say just one small shift tomorrow, what could that be?
Well, the first thing they should do is download our Equal Opportunity Report because it has so much info.
It's a brilliant read. Yeah. I read it. I devoured it. It was such a great read and really eye-opening.
So it has so much info in there on how to go about it, and how to potentially work with All Things Equal on making these changes. But I think the first step that you can take is to ask your employees, your current employees, like who needs support, how do you need support, how can we best show up for you in the workplace and really change the culture from within so that it does become a workplace where people feel included, they feel like they can ask questions, they can ask for support. And once that change starts to happen, then more people will feel like they can have a seat at the table as well, and you're just starting to generate that really positive, inclusive workplace where people feel really valued for who they are.
I love that. Yeah, you're really advocating for small, achievable steps. This is nothing that, any employer can't implement tomorrow. Yeah. What's one piece of advice you've got for someone who's got a bold idea? Write it down.
I've been thinking about this a lot. We just on Monday night, we received an award from the Age Good Food Guide Awards, which was a huge night. We were invited to the awards and then just thought we were going to meet and greet people, and then found out just before that we were going to receive an award, but we didn't know what for. And so that night I got to stand up on stage in front of the best in hospitality. You know, that night they were awarding Best New Restaurant of the Year, Best Restaurant of the Year, which went to the Flower Drum, who's just like an absolute institution in Melbourne.
Yeah.
You know, awarded the 3 hats, the 2 hats, the 1 hat, and there was All Things Equal standing up on stage receiving an award for Food for Good. That was
such a good
award
category.
that we received. Yeah, it was so beautiful.
Huge.
And after I've reflected on that, I've thought about years ago when I was wanting to do something and I was trying to work out what it was. Actually, what I focused on initially was, where do I want to be in 5 years and what would that look like? And it did look like creating something that was well respected by the hospitality industry, something where people really felt like their lives were being changed. And I was quite specific with where I wanted to end up. And then so by writing that down, it's sort of given me a North Star to work towards all the time and making decisions. And even though in the day-to-day I often feel a bit lost, like, you know, when things get
happens.
really,
you're in the
when
weeds.
things get really hard and you think, oh, what am I doing? And have I made the right decision and the likes? You know, in a week like this where we've received, you know, this really excellent award and opportunity to speak in front of the whole industry, I look back and say, well, yeah, this was always the North Star of building a hospitality business that can be really well respected in the industry, not only for, you know, the social purpose, but actually also as a hospitality business, and just using that as the North Star. And then obviously when you're in the very first initial stages, it's working out who is trusted within your network that you can speak to about the idea, and is going to openly give you feedback around the idea. You know, not completely champion all of it, because you need to have people who will give you
the hard truths.
Give you the hard truths, but who are going to be the people within your circle who are going to guide you. You know, they might say, well, I'm not sure about these parts, and then that challenges you to sort of step forward and take the next step, or, you know, adjust your idea and move along the way. So, yeah, I definitely think writing it down is.
Yeah. And I think those questions are really powerful because it just challenges you to think outside of what you might have thought was the way to do something. But to your point, if you've got that vision, then you know that that's the ultimate goal of what you're working towards. I love that.
Yeah.
Where can people find GingerSnap and All Things Equal online and on social media?
Yeah. So GingerSnap is gingersnap.com.au. Instagram is gingersnap_patisserie. And then All Things Equal is allthingsequal.com.au, and on Instagram, allthingsequal.org.au.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jess. There's just so much to take away from this conversation that I'm sure the listener can implement tomorrow as well. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
If you loved what you heard, make sure you follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. Or even better, leave us a review. And if you have a bold idea of your own, I'd love to hear from you. Check out the show notes to get in touch.